بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله، بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أعلم حيث يجعل رسالاته. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I congratulate each and every one of you in the auspicious event of the birth of the fifth infallible of the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih. The birth of Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi within our madhab has a significance value, in the sense that when we refer to his contributions towards this madhab, it is most definitely phenomenal, in the sense of the amount of narrations that exist from him and the amount of effort that he exerted in spreading the message, the true message of the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wa alih, which was of course lost after his demise, when the Khilafat went into the hands of certain individuals. You found that after 5 generations later, the Imam alayhi salam had the opportunity to reopen the doors of the true knowledge that represents the message, the true message of the Holy Prophet of Islam. That's why when the Holy Prophet, when he meets Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, he says to him, Ya Jabir, you will one day meet a son of mine, and he will be known by my name. He will have and carry my name. When you see him, Ya Jabir, give him my salams. Imagine, the salams here is given by the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to one of his grandsons, Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam. The philosophy behind this is that Rasulullah realized in that time, whilst he was part of this earthly life, that his true knowledge, that his true representations and his true risala will one day be manifest through his grandson Imam Baqir alayhi salam. And as a token of appreciation, he says, Ya Jabir, when you see him, give him my salutations. Imagine some of us, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. When you have a person who is of a high esteem, a person who is revered greatly within many communities and many different societies, when that person sends you his salams to you, it's of special value. When the marriage of our time, for example, sends salutations and greetings towards you, a normal person who has a business in Leicester, that gives you a special, it gives you a special feeling in your heart, that who am I for such a person to give me his salams? And likewise here, the Prophet ﷺ gives salams to Imam Baqir ﷺ because of the appreciation and the token and the gesture, because of his contribution towards the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the madhab, the true madhab of Rasulullah. When you look at the history of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, you realize that this was a person who came from both lineages, both heavenly lineages, the lineage of Imam Hassan alayhi salam and from the lineage of Imam Husayn alayhi salam as well. From Imam Husayn alayhi salam, we know that he was the son of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. But from the lineage of Imam Hassan, they say that Imam Zayn al-Abidin married the daughter of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, Fatima. the daughter of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And she was given a laqab, she was given a title of Siddiqa. What a wonderful and honorable woman she was. A chaste woman, a woman of Iman, to such an extent that this title of Siddiqa was chosen for her as well. Siddiqa is a title that is exclusive only for certain personalities who represent the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the one hand, we find that Maryam is Siddiqa. On the other hand, we find Khadija salamullahi alayha is Siddiqa. You find that Az-Zahra is Siddiqat al-Kubra. You find here even Fatima, the daughter of Imam Al-Hassan alayhi salam, was given this title of Siddiqa. So you find that Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salam came from both lineages. The lineage of Imam Hassan as well as the lineage of Imam Al-Husayn alayhim salam. And he was revered in terms of his lineage, in specifics. We find that Imam Baqir alayhi salam, when he becomes the Imam of his time, one of his core duties, which is of course the highlight of his life, is that he begins to spread knowledge. Literally, he begins to open the floodgates of knowledge, and he spreads as much as he can until his very final days. And one of the ways he does so, and he does so in a number of different ways, he uses a number of different tactics. One of the ways that he utilizes is that he spends a lot of time with his companions. You found that there were certain companions who were attracted to Imam alayhi salam simply because of his knowledge. The likes of Zurara ibn A'yan. Zurara ibn A'yan, they say thousands of narrations are narrated from Zurara directly from Imam Baqir alayhi salam. When you look at, for example, Jabir al-Ju'fi single-handedly alone narrates 70,000 ahadith from Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Imagine, what type of a number is this? This isn't a normal number. 70,000 ahadith. Jabir al-Ju'fi narrates from Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Look at the likes of Al-Faqih Al-Azim, Muhammad ibn Muslim. Muhammad ibn Muslim alone single-handedly narrates 16,000 according to one report, according to another 30,000 narrations from Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Forget Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Baqir alone 30,000 narrations. Imagine how much time they spent with the Imam alayhi salam, that they were able to understand, they were able to report such thousands of ahadith. One of our maraja today, may Allah lengthen his life, one of our maraja today, he says, just by reading the ahadith of Muhammad ibn Muslim, you realize that this person, he wasn't a normal person with a normal mind. This person was a faqih in the time of Imam Baqir alayhi salam. They say, or he says in particular, this marja, haffadahullah, he says just by reading the hadith of Muhammad ibn Muslim, you begin to realize the depth of his knowledge. You begin to realize, he says, just by reading the hadith and trying to understand the hadith of Muhammad ibn Muslim, it requires a person to exert every effort he has in his body. Every inch of his intellectual capacity has to be exerted in understanding the riwayat of Muhammad ibn Muslim. This is just the narrator. Imagine the teacher of Muhammad ibn Muslim, how much knowledge such a person had. That's why they say that in the time of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, one thing you have to keep in mind, the lineage of Rasulullah, they all lived in Medina. And they were, you could say, the celebrities of the time. Not because they came from the Prophet's lineage, but because of their knowledge. They were revered by the people of their communities because of the knowledge that they shared with the people around them. Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, Imam al-Baqir salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, was revered as a scholar. And his knowledge from Medina began to spread far and wide. To the extent that the Umayyads, which were now dying slowly, and of course the Abbasids were now making way, coming to the political scene, they saw him to be a threat. And that's why they made circumstances very difficult for him towards the end of his life. But nonetheless, you found that they were a threat. Imam alayhi salam was a threat for them. And they knew about this. And that's why they kept a very close eye on the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam saw the opportunity and he began to spread knowledge. what the Imam began to initiate here was the system of marja'iyya. Marja'iyya, not in the sense of how you and I understand the concept of marja'iyya. Today, if I was to ask you, for example, what is the system of marja'iyya, you would say that the system of the marja'iyya is the system of the maraja'. There's a person who is a faqih. Every time we have a question, for example, in terms of fiqh, we refer to this person. No, not in that sense. Imam Baqir alayhi salam establishes the system of marja'iyya, that whenever you are in need of help within the religion of Islam, understanding the intricacies of the religion of Islam, you need to go back to Muhamamd alayhi salam. Marja' means what? Marja' means a person who is a reference point. Whenever you need help, you need to go back to someone. You need to seek help from someone, a reference point. Yes, and today, if we need help in fiqh, we refer to certain individuals who are considered to be mujtahideen. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam made it explicitly clear that when it comes to understanding the religion of Islam, when it comes to understanding the intricacies of the religion of Islam, you need to go back to the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. And many narrations came from Imam Baqir alayhi salam establishing this very clearly. You found, for example, in one narration, he came forward and he says that the knowledge that came down with Adam alayhi salam did not go back to the heavens when Adam left this world, this earthly life. Then that knowledge which came down with Adam was passed down to his sons. That knowledge was given to one son after another. It was passed down from one prophet to another until it reaches Rasulullah, until it has reached or it has come into our hands. When we turn towards the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, what do we say? We say that they are warithat al-anbiya. They are the inheritors of the prophets. They inherited knowledge from the previous prophets that came before them. In a second narration, for example, the Imam alayhi salam says, there is not a single person on the face of this earth who can claim that they have knowledge of the entire Quran, except the awsiya, except those whom Allah has specifically chosen to understand the inner depths and the dimensions of the Quran. In the third narration, he says very beautifully, he says, there is not a single person on the face of this earth who has the truth in his hands and knows the reality. No man can give rulings according to what is right, except what comes from us, the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. Slowly the Imam alayhi salam, through these narrations, theoretically as well as practically, began to systemize, began to create the system of marja'iyya. Always go back towards the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. You want to understand something today, in this day and age, in the 21st century, you're confused about something, go back to the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. This is the knowledge which remains and which will continue to remain until the day of judgment. And so slowly when the Imam alayhi salam began to spread this knowledge that was there, you found that people or the household of the Muslimin began to benefit from his knowledge, meaning that his knowledge entered the house of the Muslimin and his knowledge began to enter the houses of the non-Muslims as well. Amongst the Muslimin, there's a beautiful incident that takes place. There was a Khawarij. One of the leaders of the Khawarij, one by the name of Nafi' ibn Azraq, one day openly comes forward. And as you know, the Khawarij, they used to give la'na towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. They believed that Imam alayhi salam became a kafir. So Nafi' ibn Azraq openly declares his hatred towards Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And he challenges the people in the open. He says, which one of you will come and disprove me? Will prove to me that the Imam alayhi salam died in the state of Iman, because I have evidence to show that he died in the state of Kufr. They would come, they would debate with him, and they would fail in their debates. Nafi', they say he was a scholar, yes, leader of the Khawarij. Until one day one man came to him and he said to him, why don't you directly speak to the descendants of Ali alayhi salam? Why don't you speak to his sons? Nafi', he says, from amongst his sons, is there an alim? Upon which the man replies, he says, you see, that statement alone tells me that you are a jahil. This signals to me that you are indeed an ignorant man for not knowing a person like Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. Muhammad al-Baqir, Imam alayhi salam, his reputation was known amongst the people. Today amongst the Sunni scholars, for example, if you refer to the works of Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi, al-Nawawi, when you refer to their works, they testify clearly when it comes to the biography of Imam Baqir alayhi salam that there was no one as knowledgeable as him. That he was the one who broke into knowledge and he began to extract the gems of knowledge. He says, let's go to his house. They went towards the house of the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam entertained them as guests, made food for them, prepared things for them. Then they began their discussions. He again said to the Imam alayhi salam, he said, prove to me that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam died as a mu'min, that he was indeed a mu'min until the very last days of his life. In that congregation, they say people began to praise Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. They began to sing his fada'il. And then they turned towards Nafi' ibn Azraq and they said, do you not agree with this? He said, of course I agree with it. Every time they would present a fadila of the Imam alayhi salam, he would say, I agree with this fadila. But what I don't agree with is that towards the end of his life, he remained as a mu'min. When you sing his praises of how great he was in Badr and Uhud and Khandaq and so on and so forth, I agree with this. But what I am saying is that towards the end of his life, when he began to have an arbitration with Muawiyah in Siffin, this was a signal that he has become a kafir. But before that, Siffin takes place towards the final years of his life. Before this, he was a mu'min, and I agree that he was a praiseworthy person. But after that point, when he makes this arbitration with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, that signals to me that he was no longer within the folds of Iman. Imam Baqir alayhi salam then comes forward and he says, An-Nafi', I have a question for you. He says, what is it? He says, there is a hadith. On the day of Khaybar, Allah reveals towards the Prophet. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I will give the banner to a person whom Allah loves and the Prophet loves. And this person, he loves Allah in return and he loves the Prophet in return. Do you not agree? He says, of course I agree. He says, who was this person? Nafi replies, he says, this person was none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He says, so you agree that this banner was given to the Imam alayhi salam. And with it, he enters the forts of Khaybar and he destroys the Jews of Khaybar. He says, yes. But as I said to you, the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they stand as they are. But towards the end of his life, yes, he turns his back from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he enters the folds of kufr. The Imam says to him, he says, stop. When Allah says and expresses his love towards Ali alayhi salam on the day of Khaybar, tell me, Ya Nafi', did Allah know that later on in the years to come, Ali alayhi salam will fight the Khawarij and then he will fight Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan? And Nafi' thinks, he says, absolutely. The knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there's no limit to it. Allah has created time, yes? The past, the present, the future. This is not within the realms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has created the system through time, but Allah is beyond this system. He has knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. He knows and he knew exactly that the Imam alayhi salam would later on, 3 decades later, fight the Khawarij and of course the army of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Imam alayhi salam smiles at Nafi'. He says, Nafi', you've just been defeated in your game. You've been defeated in your own discussion. He says, Yabna Rasulullah, explain this to me. How have I been defeated? He says, Ya Nafi', Allah loved Ali alayhi salam. Why? For his obedience or for his disobedience? He says, of course it was for his obedience. He says, here, look, Ya Nafi', Allah expresses his love explicitly to a person by name. Ali alayhi salam, I love you, and the Prophet love you, and you in turn love me, and you love the Prophet of Islam. For that, this is a fadila in itself. He says, why would Allah show His love and express His love explicitly by name to a person, knowing that later on he will turn away and turn against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That later on he will become a kafir and leave aside the tenets of Iman. It doesn't make sense. Allah only loves those who consider themselves, who turn towards Him in obedience throughout their lives. Allah never, for example, praises a person in one part of his life because of his obedience, and then for that person to later on enter the folds of kufr. This is not part of the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When An-Nafi' heard this argument from Imam alayhi salam, he mentions this, he recites this verse from the Holy Quran. He says, Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalata. Indeed, Allah knows exactly where to place His message, which lineage carries the message and the true meanings of the risala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you found that amongst the houses of the Muslimin, the knowledge of the Imam alayhi salam was very much shown. But you have to understand something. You see, one of the styles of the Imam alayhi salam when it came to spreading the knowledge of Islam was through academia, was through polemical debates and so on and so forth. But not everyone can resonate with this. Not everyone is an academic that they're able to sit down with the Imam and learn from him. A large, from amongst the population, they are not academics. Many of them were businessmen. Many of them used to lead a normal life, the way you and I lead normal lives. But they were attracted to the message of Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Why? Because the Imam alayhi salam knew that there is another fold of tabligh that needs to be tapped into. One fold of tabligh, one area or dimension of tabligh is through academia. But another fold of tabligh is through what? It is through akhlaq. It is through the behavior and how you maintain respect and how you deal and interact with the people around you. One of the attributes of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and this is something so profound that we need to try and establish within our lives. We need to understand how Imam Baqir alayhi salam lived his life. This wasn't a man who used to sit on the pulpit all day long giving lectures and answering questions. No, a major part of his tabligh resonated with his interactions with the people around him. How he behaved, how he spoke, how he treated others around him. One of the manifestations in terms of his quality and his characteristics was that he was known to be a person who used to give abundantly in his time. كَثْرَةُ الْعَطَاءِ. Yes, he used to constantly give whatever he used to earn. A large portion of it was given away to the beggars, those who came towards him in need. Salama or Salma, one of the servants of the Imam alayhi salam, she narrates, she says, I saw and I witnessed the Imam alayhi salam. Many people would come to his home. The Imam would sit them down in his house and he would prepare lavish meals for them. Not just normal meals. The Imam would prepare lavish meals for them until they were satiated. The way Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam used to prepare meals for his guests. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would provide lavish meals and then he would provide for his guests. And these guests, they came for one reason many a times. Many a times they would come for financial help. And the Imam would say to me, Salama, come and bring the bags of coins. And she says, at times I would come and I would bring coins worth 400 dirhams, 700 dirhams, at times thousands of dirhams. And the Imam would give them. And the Imam would let them leave with such amounts of money. Imagine someone comes into your house, you provide them with the best of service, VIP service, and on top of that you give them 300, 400, 1,000 pounds. Go home and look after your family. This is the Imam alayhi salam. This is exactly how the Imam used to behave with the people around him. Salama narrates that never was there a person who would come into the house of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam and would leave empty-handed. Imam Baqir in this regards, he comes forward and he says, my followers who believe in my message, if a servant refrains from giving to those who are in need, one of the things that the Imam used to do was constantly meet the needs of the people in his community. He says, whoever from amongst the servants of Allah refrains from giving and giving those who are in need, then this person who is in need will resort to haram to meet his need. The last thing that you need in a community is when people refer to haram in trying to meet their needs. If you have wealth and abundance of it, give to those who are in need. It deters them from haram channels. The last thing we need in a community is when people resort to haram. When you have people within a community that resort to haram to live their daily lives, that will bring about stagnation within the community. In fact, the community will begin to regress. There won't be any advancement, spiritual advancement in the community. And of course, in the same hadith, he carries on, he explains, he says that when a person does not spend in the way of God, when a person does not spend in that which pleases Allah, then he will spend in things, he will be afflicted in spending in things that brings about the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such a powerful hadith. They say one day a man came towards him, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, your love for the beggars is too much. You give and you give and you give. There's no ending in your giving. You give too much at times. Upon which the Imam alayhi salam beautifully, it's such a profound statement. Today on YouTube, when you watch these TEDx videos, you come across certain individuals who give the same message as the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. The Imam alayhi salam, he replies, he says, money comes, money goes. Today I have wealth in my hands, I'll give it away. Tomorrow that same wealth will come back. Wealth will come back to my hands regardless. He says, if there are others in the community who need it more than I would rather give it to them. Let them benefit from it. What do we do with the wealth that we have within our hands? We hold on to it. We hold on to it. We prepare in advance for a rainy day perhaps. Yes, we invest in a particular whatever it is. Yes, to try and increase our balances. The Imam alayhi salam would give away. The Imam would give away. That's all he was concerned with, giving away. He would say to this person, he says, you see, when you give away wealth to those who are in need, there is a sense of happiness that enters your heart. Happiness which can never be bought by wealth. When you and I earn, what do? We buy things for ourselves. We've adopted this formula within our minds. I need to have the best of everything, the best of clothes. I need to have, for example, the best of cars. I need to have the best of phones. This is a channel to happiness. When we buy things, we realize that it doesn't give us happiness. Imam alayhi salam says the best form of happiness is when you give away to those who are in need. Kathratul ata, this was part and parcel of the Imam's characteristics. Then you have Silat al-Rahim. Again, people from his family, he would come and he would treat them with kindness. He would develop a relationship with them. Yes, people who, for example, he would try and keep in communications with certain individuals within the community, amongst his family, and beyond that, further than that, his friends and his friends within the community. He would try and keep constant communication with them. Thirdly, he would constantly be cheerful. He would be smiling. He would give out this positive energy whenever he's meeting people, wherever it be, within the masjid, outside of the masjid, within the shops, in the markets, in the streets even. Whenever he would meet with people, he would embrace them and he would show positivity and he would smile and he would be cheerful. The religion of Islam is not a religion of crying and tears. It is a religion where a person smiles towards others. This is the akhlaq of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. There is a time for gham and then there is a time to be happy. A time when we show positivity to the people around us. You find that this was a person who used to be cheerful in the words that he used, as well as in the words that he would communicate others with. They say beautifully, there was a man from Sham who used to come towards Medina. When he came to Medina, he used to go towards the majalis of Imam Baqir alayhi salam. One day he goes towards his majlis, second day he goes, third day he goes, then he's addicted. He's addicted towards the Imam alayhi salam. Constantly he's there. Remember, he's a Shami, This is a man who has hatred towards Imam alayhi salam, towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. In his mind is being propagated to think that the Ahlul Bayt are the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then you find that he's addicted to the Imam alayhi salam. One day he comes towards the Imam, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, Wallah, I say this to you and only you. I grew up hating you. There was not a single person who had hatred to you the way I have hatred towards you. To me, I thought ta'at Allah, the obedience of Allah was through your hatred. To me, obedience towards the Prophet of Allah was through your hatred and the hatred towards your family. But I'm addicted towards your eloquence and your morality and your behavior and your akhlaq. Literally within a handful of days, this person becomes one of the companions of the Imam alayhi salam. He joins the camp, he joins the madhab of the Imam alayhi salam. Simply through the akhlaq of the Imam. The Imam doesn't sit there and he begins to throw knowledge and shove knowledge down these people's throat. The Imam alayhi salam, through his actions, he begins to guide people around him. Another example is they say one day a Christian man, he meets the Imam alayhi salam in the streets. When he meets the Imam in the streets, he says to him, you are a Baqir. You are a cow. The Imam alayhi salam says, that's not my name is Al-Baqir. He says, you are the son of a tabakha. He says, you are the son of a cook. He says, what can I say? That was my mother's profession. He says to him, to the Imam alayhi salam, he says, you are a son of a black woman. Racism existed even in those times. The dark skin were often seen to be amongst the lower class. Upon which the Imam alayhi salam responds to him. He says, if you are true, may Allah forgive you. And if you have lied, may Allah forgive you. That's it. Simple words. They say this man's heart melted. And exactly how the Imam alayhi salam responds to him. Then he begs the Imam for forgiveness. When it comes to his ibadah, likewise they say that this was a man of humility, tadarru'an. This was a person who felt humiliated standing in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of his companions by the name of Afrah, he says that when I entered Masjid al-Haram with the Imam alayhi salam alongside me, the Imam, the moment he saw the Kaaba, he began to cry. And he began to lament. Tears flowed from his eyes. He said, I became embarrassed. I saw that his voice became louder and louder. The people around him began to see him. The people began to notice him, that this is a man crying. I turned to him, I said, Ibn Rasulullah, if you want to cry, cry. But listen, just soften your voice a little. Cry under your breath perhaps. You're causing unnecessary attention. Upon which the Imam turned to me, he said, Ya Afra, how can I cry? How can I control my crying in front of Allah? I want Allah to notice me. I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to look at me with mercy. I want Allah to look at me with mercy and shower me with His infinite mercy. Because through this mercy, I will be successful in the morrow. Through this mercy, I will benefit from it on the day of judgment. This was the Imam alayhi salam. On the one hand, you had the academia part, where he would challenge the non-Muslims, he would challenge the Muslims, he would challenge people from different madhahib, he would give lectures, he would sit with his companions and share thousands of ahadith. But then you had the practical side of the Imam alayhi salam, that whatever knowledge he had, there was a practical dimension towards it as well. He sat with the people. He shared his meals. He showed respect and humility, even those who are less than him. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the wasila of Imam Baqir alayhi salam to help us gain knowledge with regards to the religion of Islam, to practically demonstrate that knowledge within our lives. And this, of course, creates an affinity towards Imam Baqir alayhi salam, to know more about his life and to apply the messages of his life within our lives as well, inshallah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the wasila of Imam Baqir alayhi salam to forgive our sins and to, of course, raise the levels of our marhumeen up to or alongside the levels of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. وآخر الدعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.